I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight, and for the Sephardic Temple Tifereth Israel community celebrating 101 years, Baruch Hashem, for having me here, my wife, my children, in this beautiful community. To the rabbi in residence, to the president, to the board members and the various officers of the community. I thank all of you for extending a warm invitation to us here at this Kehillat tonight. I owe a debt of gratitude to Matt as well for introducing me to Yedid Ka'achli, a friend who's like a brother to me. It's not something that I use lightly. Soon we're going to talk about how blood is thicker than water. And someone once told me that that sentence was made by a person, an entitled, abusive family member, invented this idea of blood is thicker than water. Tomer has been a friend in a way that few have been to me. He would forbid me from saying anything more about him aside from, I paraphrase, one of our greatest Torah teachers in the Talmud who said, I learned much Torah from my rabbis. I learned even more from my friends, but from my students, I have learned more than those two combined. And I think that that is a message that resonates true about our friendship. Tonight is the Askara of Tomer's grandmother. And I wish that the neshama of Mahin Batova should have an Aliyah in Gan Eden. B'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. I see some of my San Diego chevra here. So if you've heard any of my jokes, just do me a favor and please pretend to laugh, all right? They tell a story about a rabbi. And this rabbi, every Shabbat morning, would come to the Beit HaKnesset. He would get up to speak. He would share a Devar Torah, Derasha, some words of wisdom for exactly 18 minutes. Every single Shabbat, 30 years into his career, every single Shabbat, over and over and over again, exactly 18 minutes. One Shabbat, the rabbi comes, he gets up to speak, and for the first time in 30 years, the rabbi just can't stay quiet. I know you all wish a rabbi who could stay quiet. The rabbi talks, and he talks, and he talks, and he talks, and 45 minutes later, he steps down from the podium. The president comes over and says, listen, Rabbi, we love you very much. We appreciate your wisdom very much. But every week you've taught us that you speak for 18 minutes. What happened this week? You spoke for 45 minutes. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot. And the rabbi says, I'll tell you the truth. I'm a busy man. Between the morning minyan and the evening minyan and the kids program and the bar mitzvah tutoring and the wedding preparations and the classes that I have to teach and the life cycle events and the bar mitzvot and the funerals and the weddings, I don't have time to prepare my sermons. The only quiet time I have in my life is when I walk out of the front door of my home until I walk to the front door of the synagogue. And the walk from the front door of my home to the front door of the synagogue is exactly 18 minutes. And that's why every Shabbat I speak for 18 minutes. But this week, there was some construction on the main road. And they had these big orange signs, detour, and they sent me around the block in a few different directions. So I had more time to prepare my derasha, and that's why I spoke for 45 minutes today. There's two types of people who come to a Torah class. Those who want to know when it's going to be over, and they check their watch every 5 minutes. And those who want to know when it's going to be over, but they're too polite to check their watch every 5 minutes. So I'm telling you now, normally from San Diego to Sephardic Temple takes about 2 hours. But today there was a little bit of traffic in the Camp Pendleton area. I got stuck over there for an extra 45 minutes. So if you want to know how long you're going to be here tonight, I've warned you in advance. About the content of tonight's shiur. This same rabbi found himself in a community where he had traveled very far to speak. And when he gets up to speak, there was a whole audience, a room full of people, like here tonight. And as the rabbi speaks, he notices that every single person in the auditorium is sleeping. But that's how you tell when you're looking for a rabbi, if he gets everyone to sleep. The rabbi starts to speak, and everyone is sleeping, and he gets a little disheartened. Nobody's listening to my message that I came here to deliver. But there's one guy in the audience. He's sitting in the back of the room, and he looks at the rabbi, and the rabbi says something, and he says, no. He tells the rabbi, no. The rabbi says, okay, at least this guy's listening. I'm going to change my lecture a little bit and convince him that I'm right. So he changes the style of his lecture, and he starts to convince him, and the guy, after a while, he nods his head, yes. And the rabbi, yeah, I succeeded. I convinced him I'm right. And this goes on the whole night. Every time the rabbi says something, and the guy says no, after a while, the guy says yes. At the end of the whole lecture, everyone wakes up, and they give him a round of applause, standing ovation. He comes down, and he tells this man, he says, listen, I'm so grateful. You don't know. You gave me life tonight. I was speaking and nobody was listening and only you. Thank God that you came tonight. Tell me, who are you? What kind of Torah scholar are you? He says, Rabbi, I have to tell you the truth. I'm not a scholar, Torah, I don't know. I'm just a simple farmer. I'm a simple farmer, and the other day I found out that I lost my goat. My goat ran away from the farm. And I couldn't find my goat everywhere. They said the last place I didn't check was the synagogue. So I came in. You happened to be giving a lecture. I sat in the back of the room. And Rabbi, I'll tell you, from certain angles, you look like my goat. And I went, maybe my goat. And then sometimes you don't look like my goat. He says, Rabbi, I have no idea what you're talking about tonight. But one thing I can tell you, for sure you're not my goat. Tonight, I hope that the content and information that I share will not just be relevant to you, but are most likely things that you already know. Things that you know deep inside of your heart. Things that you feel inside of your conscience. Things that you know to be true. But perhaps tonight you'll allow me the gift of saying those thoughts out loud for you, of spelling them clearly for you. I'm here tonight with all of you, but I hope you'll forgive me that my most favorite person in this room is my wife. The Rabbanit is the only reason that I'm here right now. I'll tell you another story. This one's a true one. There was once a rabbi who came to a town. He got a new job as the rabbi of the synagogue. And that community had a custom, it was a tradition, that when the rabbi's horse and chariot would reach the town, the entrance of the town, the president and the head of the brotherhood and the sisterhood and all the committees that come along, the ritual committee, everybody else, they all come along and they unhitch the horses and they hitch the rabbi's carriage onto the back and they carry him to the Beit Knesset as a sign of respect. They finally reach the Beit Knesset, and the president, as he's unhitching himself from this carriage, sorry to Mr. Raymond, he comes over and says, Rabbi, I'll tell you the truth. I understand why we respect you. I understand why we carry you on our back. The one thing I don't understand is why we have to do that for your wife. Who is your wife to us that we have to carry her on our back also? And the rabbi says, tell me, why is it that you respect me? Why do you think it's okay to carry me on your back? He says, Rabbi, what do you mean? You teach us Torah, you keep us in order, you tell us when we do things wrong. You're the role model, you're the one who keeps us in check. He says, that's right. He said, who do you think keeps me in check? Who do you think is the one who keeps me in line, who keeps me straight? That's my wife. Sheli v'shalachem, my Torah, and the Torah that we'll learn tonight is my wife's. And I thank Sephardic Temple for being wise enough to give her the opportunity to speak here next week as well. Not every Kehillat that I come to wants to hear from the both of us. And just the fact that you are willing to sit here next week at this time in this place and to learn from her wisdom, I'm already telling you now my shiur is going to be nothing compared to hers. This thank you ties in. I'm already on a roll of telling you jokes and stories. I might as well do one more. We're in a Sephardic temple. And back in the day, Sephardic people, many of us used to live in Spain. Spain was doing well for us until at a certain point they decided to do that thing called the Inquisition. It didn't end so well for the Jewish people there. The Jewish people were given an ultimatum: either convert to Catholicism or we'll kill you. You also have the choice to get out of here. Most of the Jews got up and they ran away. There was one Jewish guy though. He had factories. He had some boats in the shipyard. He had a beautiful mansion. He had nice, cars, horses, whatever he had. He didn't want to leave. And they gave him a deadline. April 28th, you have to get out of here or else we're going to kill you. April 28th comes and goes. The local bishop, who also was the governor, he hears that this man hasn't left yet. And he comes over to his house and he says, "Sir, let me tell you. You're a wealthy man. We like you. You're a good guy. You have a lot of money. We would love to continue taxing you. So I'll give you one last chance. You can stay, but you have to agree to convert to Catholicism." The man was weighing his options. Does he die or does he convert to Catholicism, keep his money? At a certain point, he says, "You know what? I'll convert, but Father, you have to tell me, please. I'm only familiar with the conversion process to Judaism, which is quite complicated. How hard is it to convert, to become a Christian?" He says, "No problem, we could do it even today. There were no conversion course, no bedin, no rabbis, and just come with me to the church." He drags this man to the church. He's about to convert him. He says, "Listen, I have one condition. You can stay here, you can become a Catholic. The one thing you cannot do, because I know you Jews, you like to keep Shabbat even in secret, we heard about you. The one thing I ask of you, you are not allowed to live here and eat fish on Friday night. I know the Jews like to eat their fish on Friday night. You cannot eat fish. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, fine. But Friday night, don't eat fish." The guy says, "I promise, I'll never eat fish on a Friday night." So, the priest takes some holy water. He sticks his fingers in the holy water. He starts sprinkling the Jew on his forehead. He says, "From now on, you're not a Jew, you're a Christian. You're not a Jew, you're a Christian. You're not a Jew, you're a Christian. Mazal tov." The guy says, "That's it. That's such an easy process. Brit milah, none of those things happen." He goes home. Comes Friday night, and this priest decides he's going to hide in the bushes outside of this guy's house, peeking through the windows. The problems with the Catholic Church, it didn't start now. He's hiding in the bushes, looking into the windows. And Friday night comes around. The guy sits there at his table, and his wife comes in from the kitchen with a huge silver platter with a giant fish on top of it. She puts it out on the table, and the priest says, "We have to judge our fellows favorably. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe he's not going to eat it. Maybe he's just looking at it." And he sees the guy take a piece of fish, put it in his plate. He's about to take a bite. The priest can't hold it anymore. He breaks down the door. He says, "Are you crazy? I made you promise. You can stay here as long as you don't eat fish." The man looks at the priest and says, "Father, forgive me, but where do you see fish? I don't have fish in my home." He says, "Look, it's right there on the table. You making fun of me?" He says, "Father, that's not a fish. I went to the marketplace. I got this fish. I took him to the church. I got some of that water you have on the wall. And I sprinkled him. I said, 'You're not a fish. You're a chicken. You're not a fish. You're a chicken. You're not a fish. You're a chicken. Shabbat shalom.'" When I speak about blazing old trails, I'm referring to something that is so deep inside of us, that is so deep inside of me. Tonight's shiur was a personal shiur to me. I look around the world and I see Jews, particularly Sephardic Jews, who are told over and over and over again, "You're not a fish, you're a chicken. You're not a fish, you're a chicken. You're not Sephardic. You're enter the right word here." We owe a lot to different Jewish organizations for educating our children, for being there for us when we travel across the world, for opening up special places on college campuses to feed us on Shabbat, for marrying us off as a young couple, for doing brit milah for our children, for making sure there's kosher food in the cities that we live. And we respect them for what they have done for us. But at the same time,
8:00 p.m.
At the same time, we, Sephardic Jews, we have a tradition. We have our own culture. We have our own rabbis, our own Judaism, our own traditions, our own tunes, our own food. We have our own family structures. My wife is a social worker, and the one thing that I've learned listening to all these academic speeches that I don't really understand much of what she's saying is that you can never truly be happy if you try to be someone who you're not. I'm not a Sephardic rights activist. I'm not looking to put together Sephardic pride. I'm not here tonight to speak about any type of elitist attitude of Sephardim. But I'm here to speak with you about something that burns inside of me. You cannot make a Sephardi who they are not. We have a glorious tradition. It's inside of our DNA. It's not better, it's not worse, it's not right, it's not wrong, but it's ours. It's ours. All of you drive different cars. And some of you know that one of your cars needs certain types of fuel, the other one needs a different type of fuel. Which car is better? It doesn't make a difference. But there are different types of gasoline that we put inside of our cars, and we know that when we fill up our car with that type of gasoline, it's more efficient, it's more productive, it runs better, it has less problems you have to worry about in the future. This journey of being Sephardic, of blazing this old trail of Sephardic tradition, it's personal to me. And I only truly appreciated it when I got married to the most Ashkenazi person that I have ever met in my entire life. If I had to tell you that you know Ashkenazi Jews, you don't until you've met my in-laws. I don't mean that in any other way aside from my father-in-law is a Hasidic rabbi. He wears a dead animal on his head. He wears a long coat on Shabbat. He speaks Yiddish at home. And that is the community, the culture in which my wife grew up in. How she met me and married me, that's for next week's class. But when I'm sitting around my Shabbat table and I'm singing Zimirot that I was taught by my parents and my grandparents, and I look around my table and I see, who's sitting here with me? Do you know how many Hasidim from New York, from Monsey, from Williamsburg, from Jerusalem, from Bnei Brak, come to my Shabbat table to find inspiration and meaning in Judaism, in San Diego, in a Sephardic community, things that they don't have at home? It was at that moment that I'm sitting around my table surrounded by shtreimels that I realized Sephardic Jewry is not just mine. Sephardic tradition is not just for me. It is a terrible tragedy if we Sephardic Jews keep Sephardic Judaism to ourselves. My Kehillat in San Diego is unofficially a Sephardic community. What do I mean unofficially? I always tell people that we're ethnically diverse, but philosophically Sephardic. You see, we have this understanding in the world that somehow you could be born in Morocco, in Yemen, and you could become a Chabadnik. You could be born in Iran or Iraq, and you can become Breslev. But somehow you cannot be born in Russia or Poland and become Sephardic. It only goes one way. Why is it that somebody cannot become Sephardic? And I think that this is part of defining, so what is Sephardic? Before I go further and tell you about Sephardic, what is Sephardic? I've been here in LA enough times that people tell me, I'm not Sephardi, I'm Mizrahi. I'm not Mizrahi, I'm this one. I'm not that one, I'm the other one. And they think they invented the wheel. I'm the first one who figured out I'm not Sephardi. Sefarad. Sefarad is a country in Spain that most of us probably don't have any ancestors that went through there. So what makes us Sephardi? The same thing that all the great rabbis of Sepharad who never lived in Spain, who never stepped foot in Spain, but they signed their name, I am Rabbi so-and-so, the Sephardi. What makes you Sephardi if you were born and raised in Egypt? What makes you Sephardi if you were born in Morocco? What makes you Sephardi if you're the Rosh HaYeshiva in Baghdad? What makes you Sephardi? Because all of those Chachamim understood that Sephardic is not about where you come from. Sephardic is a philosophy. It's a worldview. It's an approach to Judaism, to Torah, and to the world that is unique to the sages of the academies of Spain and their students around the world, regardless of which country that was in. And so for tonight's conversation, I asked you, please don't get stuck on the word Sephardic and I'm not Sephardic and you're Sephardic. The word Sephardic is any person in any place at any time who identifies with Sephardic philosophy is a Sephardi. I told you before that it's unfair. It's a disservice to the Jewish community that we keep Sephardic Judaism to ourselves. What do I mean by a disservice? What exactly does the world lose if they don't have Sephardic Judaism in them? Very often in my job as a rabbi, the people that I interact with and I engage with are Jewish people who have one foot out of the Jewish door and they're on the way to taking their second foot and leaving. And so often when I look at Jews who are disenchanted, Jews that are disheartened, Jews that really wanted to be good Jews, but for whatever reason the community didn't want them, or the rabbi didn't like them, or the synagogue members judged them, or the school couldn't afford them. I look at Jews who are running away from Judaism. And some days all I want is to stop them at the doorway and say, listen, the door is yours. You're welcome to leave. You're a free person. You've tried so many types of Judaism. But have you ever tried Sephardic? My first ad, I got in big trouble for this, and I promised I wouldn't hold back tonight. My first ad I ever ran in the San Diego Jewish newspaper. It was probably my last ad I ran also. The graphic part of the ad I'll leave out. But it went something to the effect of, big ad. You've tried reform, you've tried conservative, you've tried reconstructionist, you've tried humanistic, you've tried Jewish renewal, you've tried modern Orthodox, you've tried ultra-Orthodox, you've tried Chabad, you've tried, and I listed all these denominations. But have you ever tried Sephardic? And if I could only tell you how many people called me after that ad, my tiny little bit of Knesset didn't have room for everyone. Because that's what I wish I could ask every single Jewish person. You've tried it all, or you think you've tried it all. But have you ever tried this? Because I'm certain that if you tried this, you would never leave. I'm certain that if you would try this, you would find a place, maybe not the same as somebody else, but it's a place that you would feel at home, you would feel comfortable, and you would never walk away. There's a reason why this Kehillat is 101 years old and still standing. It didn't just happen. There are 6 million Jews that perished in the Holocaust, murdered, destroyed by the most abominable of people. When I look around the Jewish community, and I say, how many Jews are there left in the world? 13 million? Really liberal estimates, 14 million? Do you know how many of those Jews, of the 14 million, come to Beit HaKnesset on Shabbat morning? Do you know how many of them sit around on Pesach night with their family and sing Ma Nishtana together? The number is about 2 million. There are about 12 million Jews in the world who don't feel part of Am Yisrael, of the greater Jewish people. 12 million is twice the amount of people that we lost in the Holocaust. And the world is silent. The world is silent. And when I look at those 12 million Jews, I again wish that before they left and before they turned their back and disappeared, that I would have given them the opportunity, come, try Sephardic before you leave. And when I wake up in the morning and I go to sleep at night, that number 12 million haunts me. Because I know that if I was them, and if I went to the same Hebrew school they went to, and if I had the same rabbi in high school like they did, and if I went to the same synagogue they grew up in, if I would have been to the same one-year Israel program that they went to, I would also leave Judaism. I've met those rabbis. I know those organizations. I would have also turned my back and ran as far as I could out the door. So where were we? Where were we, the Sephardim, to offer them a philosophy which would give them a place at the table? Come and be here. Be with us. You don't have to run. We're not running. We love being here. Look, a week from tonight, you'll be here in the Beit HaKnesset singing Selichot. Ben Adam Alecha Nirdam Kum Kera Betachanunim. You'll sit here with a Kehillat, singing Selichot. And nobody put a gun to anybody's head saying, come to the Beit HaKnesset and say Selichot or else. Somehow, it's just in our bones. These tunes are ours. These melodies are ours. We love being Jewish. We love Shabbat. We love Pesach. We love Judaism. That love, we've kept to ourselves for far too long. And before I go any further, I'm asking you, anything that I say tonight, anything that I compare tonight, Sephardim, Ashkenazim, nothing is meant personally, nothing is meant offensively. As I told you already, if I had something against Ashkenazim, I wouldn't have married the most incredible Rabbanit in the world. There was a famous Sephardic Chacham. His name was Rabbi Ben Zion Meir Chai Uziel. You may have heard of him. He was the first Sephardic rabbi in the modern state of Israel. Rabbi Uziel was once accused by one of his colleagues that he has a little bit of Sephardic and Ashkenazi inside of him. And Rabbi Uziel said, I'm not afraid of that. All of us are Sephardim and Ashkenazim. We're all Jews together. We're all part of the same people. Do we have two different gods? Do we have two different Torot? Do we have two different Judaisms? We're all the same people. What is Sepharad? I told you already. Sepharad is Spain. What is Spain? Spain is Catholics. Spanish Inquisition. Ashkenaz. What is Ashkenaz? What does the word Ashkenaz mean? Germany, Nazis, Holocaust. Why do we even identify as Sephardim or Ashkenazim? We're all part of the same people. The first thing that I can tell you of Chachmei Sepharad, the first part of Chachmei Sepharad's philosophy is that all Jewish people are part of the same people. I know this might sound novel. All Jewish people are part of our people. Our rabbis didn't have small Hasidic sects where they only cared about themselves, or only synagogues where they only welcome people from their backgrounds, or schools in which they only allow people of certain ethnicities to come into, because our leaders saw themselves as leaders for any Jewish person who needed a place to come to. And it's exactly because of this universal attitude of Chachmei Sfarad that I believe now more than ever, Sephardic Judaism is needed. Because my children, as Sephardic as they are half Hasidic. And your children and your grandchildren are not ethnic Sephardic Jews anymore. And our Chachamim were the only Chachamim in the history of the world who looked at the Jewish community and said, we have a responsibility for every single person, not just for our people. This universal attitude is built into our teachings. It's built into our philosophies. And it's exactly what this Jewish community, this world, so desperately needs. I already told you when I discovered my need for Sephardic Judaism, when I saw so many people inspired by it. But I have to tell you another story. That is how I grew up, on one foot. I grew up in San Diego, California. There are 100,000 Jews in San Diego, California. About 71% of them aren't affiliated even with the JCC. How you counted them, I have no idea. I grew up going to the nearest synagogue to my house. It was a local Chabad synagogue. I then went to the local day school. It was a Chavetz Chaim day school. That's what there was. My parents had sent me to yeshiva in Baltimore, where I had studied at the Ner Israel Rabbinical College for 5 years. A very strict Lithuanian yeshiva. And as a child who grew up in an innocent bubble of San Diego, I really only met this world of Ashkenaz when I came to Baltimore. I learned in Baltimore the most Torah that I've ever learned in my whole life. So I can't tell you, 5 years, no phones, no iPads, no Facebook, no computers, no nothing. We didn't really have radios. We just stayed up all day and all night, learning Torah and learning Torah, learning Torah, and to that I am forever grateful. But something about the Judaism that I learned there didn't sit well with me. When I sat around that Rosh Hashanah table, it didn't remind me of the table of my parents. When I was there, around the holiday table or the Shabbat table, it didn't evoke inside of me the same feelings that I felt when I was by my grandparents' table. I very often felt like I was a fish who was pretending very hard to be a chicken. We mentioned Rabbi Ben Zaken earlier, one of the rabbis who sits in our Shiviti Bedin. The other rabbi who sits in our Bedin is Rabbi Yosef Zernigan. Rabbi Yosef Zernigan is one of my dearest friends. And whenever he teaches Torah, wherever he goes, he has one rule. It's called the grandparent rule. Every time he sits in a Jewish community, or he sits at someone's Shabbat table, or he observes any Jewish person observing any Jewish practice, he thinks in his mind, if my grandmother would see this person doing this, would she think they're crazy or they're normal? It's the grandmother rule. My Judaism, if my grandparents were to look at me doing Judaism this way, would they think I'm crazy? Yes, then it's not Judaism. I could give you hundreds of examples. From checking your lettuce leaves on light boxes, to taking magnifying glasses to your etogim, to allowing only certain things to be done and pre-doing this on Shabbat and not that on Shabbat. All kinds of fantastical things that if my grandparents would have seen people do this, they would think they lost their mind. In Sephardic Judaism, one of the most important rules is that Judaism has to be organic. It has to be natural. It has to be part of your life. It has to enhance your life. Your Shabbat has to seamlessly fit in with your Sunday through Friday. Your family is crucial to your Jewish experience. And anything that turns you against your family can't be part of your grandmother's Jewish experience. But before I get myself to families and blood and water, my eyes opened up in yeshiva that first Shabbat that I arrived in Baltimore. I don't remember the year. I will date myself if you remember the year. I was in a summer program, or a winter program here actually, in the mountains around Los Angeles. We were a bunch of 8th graders. It was Motzei Shabbat. There was a bonfire. We all had our arms around each other with marshmallows and singing all kinds of happy songs. And we get news. News that the first Israeli astronaut in space, Ilan Ramon, alav hashalom, had just died. And the only thing that comes to mind is those biblical verses of simcha le'evel, of joy turning into sadness. If we went from singing happy songs to crying our eyes out. As little children, our first Jewish guy in space died. Our dreams were shattered. Our hopes were broken. That same Shabbat, I found myself in Baltimore, listening to one of the great rabbis there speaking. And he said the following sentence. My dear students, Ilan Ramon may have been an Israeli hero, but he was not a Jewish hero. He didn't keep Shabbat. He didn't eat kosher food. He didn't learn Torah every day. He didn't put on tefillin every day. I don't even know if any of those things are true, but I'm saying what he said. Ilan Ramon was an Israeli hero, but most definitely not a Jewish hero. My heart inside of me at that moment felt like someone had stabbed a knife inside of me. I mean, who separates between Jews and Israelis, aside from anti-Semites? In the house that I grew up, in San Diego, California, 1948, the establishment of the State of Israel was the most important event to happen in Jewish history in the last 2,000 years. We finally came back home. We established our own state, as dysfunctional as it might be. We have our own prime minister. Whether you like him or not is up to you. We have our own Knesset and our own army and our own police force and our own flag. We have our own national anthem. We're Jews back in the Jewish homeland. And you're telling me that there's a difference between an Israeli hero and a Jewish hero? Don't be fooled. Every Jewish person loves the land of Israel. But loving the state of Israel and seeing religious significance in the founding of the state of Israel is a whole different game. You're sitting here in Los Angeles. Not so long ago, it was Israeli Independence Day. Do you know how many synagogues in this city do not celebrate Israeli Independence Day in a religious fashion? Shacharit in the morning is the same as any other Tuesday or Wednesday. How could it be that the most important event in Jewish history is ignored, if not despised? I didn't say here. I'm speaking here. I'm preaching to the choir. Rabbi Yonatan ben Harosh was the rabbi in Morocco. He wrote a letter to his students in France saying, Mi she'eno tzioni eneno Yehudi. Whoever is not a Zionist is not Jewish. How can you separate those two things? Rabbi Yosef Kafich of Yemen wrote this slightly differently. Maimonides, the Rambam, has taught us that only sick people require medication. And that if a healthy person takes medication, it could actually harm them. I'm sure it says that on the pill bottle you have at home. Rabbi Yosef Kafich taught us that only a Judaism that was so sick that it didn't care anymore about the homeland, it didn't care anymore about Israel, needed this medicine called Zionism. But us, Sephardim, what do we say 3 times a day? V'techazena einenu b'shuvacha leTzion barachamim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, return us home to Tzion. We don't need this medicine because Zionism is who we are, not a part of who we are. If you would ask me, the attitudes towards the state of Israel and the return of Jewish people to the state of Israel and the attitude of Jews towards that state of Israel is also one of the greatest hallmarks of Sephardic Judaism in the world. Today, I had dinner at Tomer and Liza's house. There's a word that only exists in Farsi, but the concept exists in every single Sephardic or Middle Eastern tradition in the world. The Persians call it tarof. Do you know what tarof is? When you go to dinner with your friends, and at the end of the meal, you start fighting about what? Who's going to pay the bill? I'll pay, no, I'll pay, no, I'll pay. And you do this back and forth. Okay, let's split it 50-50, or I'll get it next time, or something like that. And if you don't play that game, you're the most rude person in the world. Every culture has it in the warmer climates of the world. I was once standing in line at the passport office in San Diego with my wife, and there was a lady who was about to go on mission for her church for a year. They were sending her somewhere in Africa, some long-lost place. And she had this book. I don't remember the title, but it was titled Warm Cultures and Cold Cultures. And this is in that book. When I come to someone's home, do you want to eat? Do you want to drink? No, I just had it home. You're starving. You just drove here from San Diego. You haven't put anything in your mouth for 3 hours. No, I already have full. I have room to move. And then you play this game. Finally, okay, let's eat. And then you devour 3 rib-eye steaks in one meal. But it's part of the game. When I first came to my in-laws' house, my wife told me, Yonatan, they're going to ask you once if you want water. And if you say no, for the next 2 weeks, no one's going to give you anything to drink. You always have that situation. You go out with your American colleague to dinner. You're like, I'll pay. Oh, that's so nice of you. That's the wrong answer. It's a fight about it. Part of our tradition is I come to your home and you give me something to drink. Give me something to eat. I eat your food. I drink your drinks. I sit at your table. I sit on your couch. Both of my grandparents were Torah scholars. One from Yemen and one from Morocco. When they came to Israel, some in the 40s, some in the 60s, they had to deal with an Israel that wasn't very welcoming of Sephardim, if I could say it lightly. And most definitely not welcome of religion. And most of my aunts and uncles, at a certain point in time, their religious observance became more lax, if I could say, in a nice way. Yes, all of them observe holidays. Yes, all of them are careful to try to eat kosher food. Yeah, they all try. They're good Sephardic Jews, traditional. The first thing I do when I land in Tel Aviv airport is I take a taxi or a train to my Aunt Esther's house, my mom's older sister. She doesn't dress like your Rabbanit. She doesn't do Shabbat like your rabbi. But when I come to her house, the first thing I do is have a seat at her table and eat whatever food she just made, the schnitzel from the frying pan, the meatballs from the oven, the fish from the stovetop. I eat in her plates and I drink in her cups. And when people ask me, but does she keep kosher? She's my aunt. I eat in my aunt's house. This is my mother's sister. What kind of rabbi would I be if I came to my aunt and said, sorry, please bring me a paper plate and cupcakes from the bakery you bought down the street? That takes two people though. Because my aunt, when she hears that I booked my ticket to Tel Aviv, the first thing she does is she goes to the butcher down the street and says, listen, normally I get the kasher meat. Do you mind getting me the glatt kasher meat today? She comes and makes me food that she knows that I will eat. And when I come to her, I don't ask any questions. Because she's my family. And family is not a joke. Because blood is not water. When I look around the Sephardic community, and I see how many of us have relatives who won't eat in our homes anymore, who won't drink our drinks anymore, who come to our family events with airplane packaged meals, it hurts me. It hurts me because I see a Jewish community where family, connection is such a priority. And somehow we've given it up for a culture that is not ours. If you ask my relatives why they ran, why did you leave? My grandfather wasn't a nice Jew for you? Your father wasn't a good man to you? Your parents didn't teach you a nice Shabbat? And they will tell you the exact opposite. The Shabbat of my parents, the Pesach of my parents, the Kashrut of my parents, I loved it. But I don't see that when I look at the Judaism around me. I don't see the Pesach that my family observed. I don't see the Shabbat, the joy that we had in my home. I don't find synagogues that make me feel the way my synagogue made me feel growing up. All I see around me is fanaticism. Fanaticism which grows and rears its ugly head. Day by day it gets worse and worse and worse. We ran not from Judaism. We love Judaism. We ran from a fanatic form of Judaism that took away our home and suffocated the last safe place that we felt was ours, the Beit HaKnesset, the synagogue. Don't scare me away with your fanaticism, and I will love Judaism. What are the Jewish people? What makes me a good Jew? So some people keep Shabbat, and some people don't. And some people are very particular about kashrut, and some people not so much. Some people walk from their houses on Shabbat morning, and some from their car on Shabbat morning. Some people do this, and some people do that. There are some people who walk to the Beit HaKnesset with a big beard and a big kippah, and they're the worst people in the world. They don't even belong inside of the Beit HaKnesset. What makes a Jew a religious Jew? Why do you throw away all of the 613 commandments and get stuck on 2 of them? Respecting my parents is not one of the 10 commandments. Being ethical in my business practices is not one of the mitzvot. Being a kind person to the people I pray with, it's not a mitzvah. Why all of a sudden have you decided who is considered a good Jew and who is not a good Jew? And now I'm left out. Now somehow I don't belong here. I don't care how you get to the Beit HaKnesset. I don't care what you do outside of this Beit HaKnesset. I care that you're here. That you're one of those Jews who shows up when tefillah happens. You're one of those Jews that comes here for Kal Nidrei when we pray in front of the bima. You're one of those Jews that kisses the Sefer Torah when it walks by you because you love the Torah of Israel. Weddings. Do you know how many calls I get? Rabbi, my relatives, they're making weddings. I don't know. Can I go to the wedding? Is it appropriate, this wedding? They have mixed dancing. There's food. It's not kasher. All kinds of questions like that. Tell me, my dear friend, you weren't born with legs? There's damn thing happening at the wedding you don't like, so take your legs and walk out of the room. You're not a grown adult. You can't just choose when to leave and when to come. You don't want to eat the food? That's wonderful. You're going to save this couple $200 at their wedding. Don't eat the food. All the people who aren't dressed appropriately? What kind of person are you walking around the wedding checking out how all the people are not dressed? Where do they create these people? The chuppah? The rabbi of your community is doing a chuppah and you can't come, you're more religious than him? Do you know how many couples in the world choose not even to get married with a rabbi or a chuppah? Suddenly you have a cousin who's getting married with a rabbi and a chuppah, and you have the audacity not to be there? In Sephardic tradition, not only is family important, but fanaticism is the most evil, vile thing that exists, and our chachamim spend their lives distancing our communities from that type of mentality. I get phone calls all the time in San Diego. Now especially it's tourist season. Summer, everybody comes to leave wherever they leave to come to San Diego. Hello, is this Kehillat HaShamayim? Yes. Let me ask you, is this community an Orthodox community? I say no, and then immediately they hang up the phone. Nobody sticks around to listen to answer the question. This community is not an Orthodox community. It's a Sephardic community. I don't know what Orthodox means. I don't know what Reform or Conservative or, I told you all the denominations earlier. I don't know what that means. All I know, I'm a Sephardic Bet Knesset. I'm a Sephardic rabbi. These are my people. This is my Kehillat. I'm responsible for every person in this room. It's really easy to create synagogues that cater to a homogenous group of people. It's so easy to have a community where everybody keeps Shabbat the same way, and everybody eats food the same way, everybody dresses the same way. Of course, that's a piece of cake. It's so easy to have a temple where nobody, so we don't keep kosher, we don't keep Shabbat, so I want a rabbi who doesn't keep kosher, who doesn't keep Shabbat either. That's so easy. In the Sephardic community, I want a chacham. I want a chacham, though, who knows that everybody in this community is not the same. That our rabbis told us, just like people's faces are different, so too, their opinions are different. The job of a Sephardic rabbi is a hard one. It's their job to make sure that everybody in the community, regardless of who they are or where they come from or what they believe or do, belongs in the same place. And they all feel welcome alongside each other. And if the rabbi isn't able to offer some relevant message without marginalizing half the people in his community, my dear friend, step down from your job and go work in another field. You don't belong in the Rabbinate. You don't belong in a job that is meant to unite and not to divide. So I can't help all of those who already broke into thousands of denominations. But I'm standing here in what is presumably the oldest Sephardic community in this coast. And I'm telling you that I'm proud to see a Kehillat that is Sephardic. And that's its affiliation. And I ask you, perhaps presumptuously, don't allow yourself to be dragged anywhere else, aside from this is who we are, and this is our home. A Sephardic Bet Knesset, when you see that sign, Sephardic Bet Knesset, you should know that any time you see that word, this is a safe haven for you. You should know that regardless of which Sephardic Chacham you meet in the world, you should. I'm not telling you it is. You should know that a Sephardic Chacham is one that will talk to you and care about you and love you and not judge you and not hurt you and not marginalize you or lose you. But someone who is there for you, who makes you feel welcome and accepted in the place that is the Bet Knesset. If we keep separating into subgroups of subgroups of subgroups, how many Jews are we left? I told you 14 million. You already got rid of 12 million. How many are we? If we keep separating, we're going to disappear. If we don't adopt a Sephardic model of community, Am Yisrael will be gone before you can blink. I want to leave you off with one last thought. It's about a trip that I took to Las Vegas, California. And they always tell you what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Nothing exciting happens when I go to Vegas. Why did I go to Vegas? Very simply. I forgot to take my wife on a vacation on winter break one year. I was busy working. I forgot that people have only a set time that they have to leave work. I realized at the end of the trip I have 3 days and nowhere to take my wife that I can afford on a rabbi salary. So I started typing in destinations on the computer, and it came up, Las Vegas, 3 nights with a hotel, certain price, flights included. Flights included, that's amazing. I never flew Spirit Airlines before. I get to the airport, they charge you for your bag. What do I mean for your bag? It's not the bag you put under the plane. The bag you take with you on the plane, they charge you for it. There's no drinks, there's no food. I was afraid to go to the bathroom, maybe they'll wait. I don't know what they're gonna do over there. I'm pretty sure that if the gas masks were to come out of the ceiling, you'd have to put in quarters in order to keep breathing. But listen, we made it to Vegas. We made it there. And we realized very quickly that there's not much for a rabbi and a rabbinate to do on the Las Vegas Strip. But there's beautiful nature around Las Vegas. Mount Charleston, Lake Mead, Hoover Dam. I know you guys think that, that's what they all say. Yeah? But that's where we went. There was one night, I figured, let's go see one of these famous hotels they're talking about. We come inside of this hotel lobby and there's slot machines and noise and sounds and posters everywhere. If you're addicted to gambling, you call this number. And I'm jealous of those people. They have so much money to throw into the machine. I would like to look at them. And I see one guy in the middle of this hotel lobby. He's a Hasidic guy, but a Hasid in disguise. You know how Hasidim, they get disguised? They come to Las Vegas with a long peot and a beard and tzitzit flying out of their pants, but they have a baseball cap. You would never guess they were Jewish. I see this guy, I don't know if he wants me to know that he's Jewish or not, so we approach him, we start talking. I don't speak Yiddish, not very well, not at all. So my wife, she starts talking to him, we make a connection. He's 17 years old, what is he doing in Las Vegas? You don't want to know what he's doing in Las Vegas. Okay, nice conversation, shalom aleichem, we keep moving. Fast forward a few months later, it's a week before Pesach. And my wife gets a phone call. Hi, my name is so-and-so. I don't know if you remember me. I met you in a hotel lobby in Las Vegas. Oh, hi, shalom aleichem. He says, let me ask you a question. I know we don't really know each other, but do you have any room for me at your Pesach Seder? Thinking to myself, I don't know this guy. I met him in disguise in a hotel lobby. I want to host him in my home with my family, with my kids for Pesach. And I take the phone and I say, listen, I thought you come from New York, you have a big family, you're one of 17 children. Where are your parents for Pesach? And the phone is silent for a moment. And he tells me, Rabbi, my parents told me, don't bother coming home for Pesach. We don't need a child like you at our Pesach Seder. They don't have room in their life for a rebel like me. The Torah tells us a very unique commandment, that we are forbidden from sacrificing our children to Molech. Those of you who've paid attention in the parasha, Molech is an idol. There was a certain idol, I want to spare you the gory details right now, in which people, Jewish people, would come, if you've been to Jerusalem, right as you're coming up the ramp to the old city of Jerusalem, Shaar Yafo, there's a valley over there. That valley is called Gei Ben Hinnom. You've probably heard the word Gehinnom, hell. This Gei Ben Hinnom, the valley of Ben Hinnom. Ben Hinnom was a priest of a certain idol worship called Molech, in which parents would bring their children, and as part of their religious devotion, they would offer their babies to be burned alive in front of the idol of Molech. And they would stand there praying while their children burned to death. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, one of the first commandments he tells us, upon entering the land of Israel, don't worship, don't offer your children to the idol of Molech. And I think to myself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're a Jewish people. Everybody in the audience who just heard this idea of sacrificing children to Molech, everybody knows I would never do such a thing. So to which people are you commanding? Don't offer your children to Molech. Which crazy parents would do such a thing to their children? I'll tell you who. There are parents, in the name of a God that they invented, and a Torah which they misinterpreted, and teachings of our rabbis which they have manipulated and perverted, that have decided that their false God, that their fake Judaism, that their misinterpretation, that their rabbi, that their community comes before their love of their children. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is warning us. When you come to the land of Israel, don't fall into this trap. I, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, am not asking for you to sacrifice your children to me. I'm asking for you to love your children, to want your children, to be there for your children unconditionally, despite who they are and what they become and where they go. And I think that Sephardic Judaism, my grandparents, they raised their children. I don't care how you come to my Shabbat table, just do me a favor. Come to my Shabbat table. I don't care what you do on Pesach, but we're going away as a family. Would you please join us? My parents raised us the same way. Suffice it to say, I'm the only unemployed one in the whole family. I'm the only rabbi. All of my brothers chose different paths for themselves. But I was taught from a very young age that all of us are brothers. All of our sisters-in-law are family. And all of our children will forever be doing this together. And so I'm asking you, before I leave here tonight, we owe this to our children. We owe this to our grandchildren, even those we don't yet have. We're not chickens. We're fish. We breathe a different kind of air. Our Torah gives us a celebratory, beautiful, inspirational Jewish experience that is full of balance and sanity and moderation. And I'm asking you, before it's too late, to reclaim the Sephardic model as the model of Judaism. We owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our children, and we owe it to our grandchildren. And if someone comes and tells you, this is new, this is not real, this is not Judaism, this is watering it down, whatever they're going to tell you, you just tell them, listen, this is very old. All we're doing is blazing an old trail. Thank you so much for learning with me tonight. I'm welcome to stick around here for as long as you would like, but really, Tiskul Mitzvot, thank you for being here with me tonight.